Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, and radio network. What a first weekend. College football in the books, week numero uno, and just absolutely riveting stuff. And where do we sit after just 72, 96 hours? Well, I am a guy that loves big risks, but big opportunities. And a bunch of programs took advantage of those scenarios in week one. I don't learn anything by anybody skull dragging somebody that is going to go 4-8. So, tip of the hat to some big programs. We're going to talk about those, of course. Billy Napier, Billy's buy-in. Gators buying in. Now, a long way to go, but this is a Utah team that hung 40-plus points on Ohio State last year in the Rose Bowl, brought 9 of those starters back on offense, moved the ball, but couldn't execute inside the 10 numerous times. So we're going to look at that. Also, Mike Norvell's nail in the coffin. He's 2-0. Brian Kelly handing him his first loss at LSU. What to make of Mike Norvell's first big win. When you beat an SEC school like that, that's a big win for Florida State. So we're going to look at that. Also, Dawg dominance. Georgia should be ranked number 1. They should be. Defending national champs, to do that to Oregon, I'm a what have you done for me lately guy in this sport, especially when you're undefeated. So we're going to look at that as well. Remember, Harp on Sports, the Bar podcast, audio, radio network. How do you attach yourself to us? Now, how do you follow us? At Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports via the auditory route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Harp on Sports, the Facebook page, Harp on Sports, the Bar, the YouTube channel, and of course, check out the website, harponsports.com. Okay, going to start off with Florida. You know, Anthony Richardson, the job that he did out of the pocket, his ability to make guys miss, things that can't be taught. Things that can't be taught. Taller version of Patrick Mahomes at that. At least that's what he looked like. He did. That's what he looked like against Utah. Now, when you get inside of the SEC, those defensive backs, are they going to be as fooled as easily? The linebackers, I don't know, but Utah's a good team. Let's not discount that. Everybody, Pac-12 sucks. Utah was nothing. Then why are you just diminishing your accomplishment? If you're going into this and say, Florida owns Utah, man, the Pac-12's nothing. You're nothing out there. Then it doesn't mean anything. What, it's a gigantic win. It's a monstrous win. Celebrating like you win the SEC. And rightfully so. But in the same vein, it doesn't mean they were nothing. No, come on. Don't diminish your accomplishment. Utah's a top 10 team. They are. Will they finish there? Don't know. But it's like the overrated chant in basketball. Knock that off. No, enjoy your success. And, you know, I thought initially, I'm like, boy, he reminds me a lot of Cam Newton, but he's not as physically as big as Cam Newton. Maybe that'll come with time. He's faster than Cam Newton. I'm going to give you such a strange comp for him. You know what he reminds me of? Josh Allen, his first year in the NFL. Go back and look at Josh Allen, his first year in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. That's who he reminds me of. Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills, he struggled in the pocket throwing the ball. He did. Go back and look what he did. I remember him single-handedly beating the Jaguars running the ball. That's a game Leonard Fournette got kicked out of. Watching him outside of the pocket reminds me of Josh Allen outside of the pocket. Now, people are going to compare him to Cam Newton, and rightfully so. I get it. I already mentioned Patrick Mahomes' escapability. I get it. But he looks so much like Josh Allen his first year in Buffalo. Now, that was a Bills team that was competitive. Bills team that didn't make the playoffs. Bills team even at the end of the year that people said, I don't know if they should have drafted Josh Allen or not. And now look at it. People saying he's going to be the MVP this year. Has a shot at it. He was a sneeze away from the Super Bowl last year. That's who he reminds me of. Anthony Richardson reminds me of Josh Allen his first year in Buffalo. Now, Anthony Richardson's faster than him. He's faster than him, but his escapability outside of the pocket. Anthony Richardson has this thing where he can just keep Most guys, when they come out there on a dead sprint and they kick it into a gear and kick it into a gear, he kicks it into those gears like you can see him go second, third, fourth. He does it. When usually guys sprint, you see the distance gradually kick. He's different. He's one of those guys that looks like an engine jolting is what he looks like in a car. Like a motorcycle that just jumps. Boom, boom. Now, look. I don't want to get ahead of themselves. What do I think? I said Florida's going to go 7-5. Now that I've seen what I've seen, I think they're probably an 8-4 football team. They were good. Utah made a bunch of mistakes. Florida forced a bunch of mistakes. And you see the biggest difference. But the biggest difference, everybody thinks it's playmakers. Look, the Pac-12 has playmakers. Pac-12 has good quarterbacks. Big Ten has playmakers. Big Ten has quarterbacks. Big 12, all that. The biggest difference between the SEC and every other conference is up front. The biggest difference between the SEC and every other conference, offensive and defensive lines. That's the biggest difference. And Florida's offensive line looked the best that they've looked in a decade plus. I mean, Florida had what? What I write on 283 yards rushing? Now look, Anthony Richardson had over 100 of it, but I remember talking to the guys behind me in the stands and saying, when's the last time you saw a Florida team have 100 yards rushing in the first quarter against a good team, against a top 10 team? And I give Florida credit. Now, nobody thought Utah was going to be what they were coming into this year, like a top 10 caliber team. But I love teams that schedule hot. Go out of the gate. Go for it. I love what Georgia did with Oregon, Ohio State, Notre Dame. I like what LSU did with Florida State. Now, Florida State jumped the gun with Duquesne. But even a couple years ago when Florida played Miami, I want to see what you are. Show me what you are out of the gate. Let's find out where we are and we can go from there. Well, what if you lose? Well, then if you lose, Florida, look, Ohio State did this about 8-9 years ago, right? Was it been that long? 7 years ago. They lost to Virginia Tech out of the gate, then they ran the table. Find out who you are. If you're good, look, Alabama played Utah State this year. This is probably like only the third time in like 8 or 9, or third time in 10 years that Nick Saban hasn't taken on a big boy out of the gate, or at least a Power 5, solid, strong program. So I'm not too worried about it. He's going to soon. Right? They got Texas coming up. So they're week 2, going to kind of get things ready for them. I love it. Good for Florida. Again, Billy Napier, they all buy in. And the biggest difference between Billy Napier through 1 week and Dan Mullen all last year is assignment football. Assignment football. Dan Mullen is the prime example of a great offensive mind, a great coordinator, but he's not a CEO type. He's not. He's the flashy brother. You know, it's not exactly the same, but Billy Napier is more Michael Corleone. Dan Mullen is more out there, more brash, more outspoken. It's like, you got to rein that in a little bit, man. Rein that in a little bit. So, there you are. Big win for Florida. Big win for Florida out of the gate. Now, if they lose to Kentucky, it wipes it out. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But what does this tell me? This tells me that this team, look, they're going to win one of those first 2 SEC games, whether it's Kentucky or Tennessee. And then they're just going to skull drag South Florida. This Florida team should be 3-1. This Florida team should be no worse than 3-1 entering week 5. There you go. Mike Norvell, Florida State. What a win. They pretty much controlled LSU until that fourth quarter. And they were looking for the nail in the coffin, right? Going to win that thing probably 31-17. And boom, turnover, 99 yards the other way. Florida State has a chance, or LSU has a chance. Missed extra point. Look, JT Daniels, Brian Kelly and LSU, that's going to be again, it's not exactly the same as where Billy Napier and Florida are. LSU's not quite, I think LSU's probably a little bit a step behind that right now, but that team's just going to get better and better and better as the year goes on. Now they got a little bit of a gauge, but you look at Florida State from LSU's perspective compared to everybody else. Look, A&M's better in that division. A&M's better. Of course, Alabama's better. I don't think Auburn is. I don't think Mississippi State is. Arkansas is better. Arkansas, A&M, and Bama are better than Florida State, talent-wise. Other than that, they can win those other 3 games in that division. If they can win those other 3 games in that division and lose those 3, that's 4 losses. Their crossover with Florida is a big one. Brian Kelly's going to go to a bowl game this year. The question is it 7-5 or 6-6? May get to 8-4 if you can somehow knock off Arkansas. Not beating A&M, not beating Bama. So there's where that is on LSU's front. They're just going to get better. And Mike Norvell's probably got an 8-9 win football team. Probably does. The ACC's weak. You look at the games, they get Clemson at home. I don't know if that's winnable. You look at games for Florida State, Miami, Clemson, NC State. There's some in there that Miami and Clemson got to split those 2. They split those 2, they can win 9 games. You bet they can. And look, he's in year 3 and he's just building this. And Mike Norvell's an example of what happens when you have to give a guy. You got to be patient. Got to be patient. Year 1, COVID year, disaster. Year 2, last year, 5-6, have a chance to go to a bowl game, lose to Florida State in Gainesville, or lose to Florida in Gainesville. You don't have, Florida doesn't have their coach, their head coach. Florida still dumps you. You could have gone to a bowl game. Okay, you missed those practices. Now this is just building. So what do I think? From what I saw about Florida State, I think Florida State's an 8-9 win football team. I think LSU 7-8 wins max, which is pretty good for Brian Kelly in year 1 there. With Mike Norvell, I think anything less than 8 wins, you're like, ugh. I know it would be improvement since they were 5-7. Now you can sit there 7-5, Seth. Yeah, but after the win against LSU, you kind of look around and go, okay, you should be knocking off the Wakes. You should be knocking off the NC States. Should be beating those teams talent-wise now. I don't know if you're ready to beat Clemson. Maybe Miami on the road, right? I don't know about that, but Crystal Ball's in his first year as well. So Florida State, to me, look, I would not be surprised at the end of the year if Florida's sitting there at 8-3 and Florida State's sitting there at 8-3. I think an 8-3 matchup between Florida State and Florida at the end of the year is reasonable. I think it's reasonable. Is it going to happen? No guarantees on anything, but it's reasonable to think that both of those teams could have 8 wins. And the winner of the Florida State-Florida game has a chance at a 10-win season. I think that's reasonable. I don't think neither of those teams are going to compete for their conference championship. But it's that next tier down. So, Mike Norvell, year 3, big year for him. Can he get to double-digit wins? Maybe. Florida going to get to double-digit wins is going to be a little bit tougher, right? If Georgia, A&M on the road, of course, LSU is always tough. So, they're going to have their hands. They get at least LSU at home, but it really doesn't matter where that game's been played. So, there's that front. LSU has beaten them twice in a row, too, right? But wow. Good. What a day for the state of Florida. The Big 3, right? Big 3 showed out. In Miami, picked up a win. So, what was the preeminent power of college football 20 years ago? The Big 3 in this state, Florida, Florida State, and Miami. 30 years ago, preeminent power. In the last 10 to 15 years, you've only been able to get 2 good at a time, right? Never all 3. All 3 of these teams have a chance to win 8 games. All 3 of these teams have a chance to win 9 games when you count a bowl. Doesn't happen very often, does it? At least not lately, not in the last 10, 15 years. Wanted to pivot to this before we wrapped up. Looking at college football overall, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Look, Notre Dame was competitive for 3 quarters. Took it into the 4th quarter. They just don't have the horses yet. I think Marcus Freeman's going to be good there. I do. Now they need to come back and they need to light up Marshall next weekend. But Ohio State, talent-wise, Notre Dame competed for 3 quarters. And they still lost by double digits to a top 5 team. But that's another team that's going to get better. Look, Notre Dame could go 9-3 this year, but they're going to be a better 9-3, geared towards the future than they were a 10 or 11-1. He's just going to get better and better and better. Defensively, they're very. When's the last time you saw a team hold Ohio State to under 3 touchdowns? I mean, when's the last time you saw a team? How about this? Because Ohio State did score 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, right? When's the last time you saw a team hold Ohio State to 3 points in the first half? In Columbus. It's impressive. It's impressive what Notre Dame did. Not quite there yet. Quarterback concerns. It's something that, last year they had a little bit. Before that, Ian Book, you didn't really have that for 3 or 4 years. Notre Dame has quarterback concerns again. A little bit. Georgia, look, Alabama, what Alabama did. USC's back. First of all, none of you are back. Nobody's back. Oh, back. We're back. Florida's back. Florida State's back. No. You got to beat like a top 2 or 3 team. I've always said that I hold you guys to a higher standard. I hold Florida State to a higher standard than LSU missing an extra point. I hold Florida to a higher standard than beating a Pac-12 team at home, the 7th-ranked Pac-12 team at home. A 7th-ranked Utah at home. I hold Florida. You know when Florida's back? When they dump Georgia. I'll say Billy Napier and Florida's back when they beat Georgia in Jacksonville. Florida State's back when they do what? When they beat Clemson. I'll tip my hat to that. Okay, you're back. Texas, I'm not even getting started on that. They beat Alabama, are they back? Well, they'll shock me. But Texas, I hold to a higher standard than that. Yeah, sure, you beat Alabama, you're back. Why not? USC, come on. You see how dominant USC's back when I see them in the Pac-12 championship and they've got 11 wins. Just I hold you guys to higher standards than that. It'd be like sitting there saying, boy, he's in good shape. He no longer weighs 330 pounds. He weighs 300. I'm like, no, you're in shape when you're 225. Like me. No, 198. So that I hold you to a higher standard than that. Georgia, look, they're the most dominant team in college football. Georgia's head and shoulder. If I rank, I had Georgia number 1. Alabama didn't do anything to try. No, but Georgia earned it. High risk, high reward. What Georgia did to Oregon, Georgia number 1. Now, one thing that I wrote down here, Kirby Smart's quote, talking about Oregon's coach, former buddy or his buddy, former coach. We have better talent we have better players than they do, although he'll never say it. He's got to be careful of this. He said this about Florida last year, like our players are better than their players. This is where you're going to get in trouble because he doesn't want to disparage coaches. It's like, well, he's just got to get better players in there and then he'll be able to compete with me. That's something that's dangerous as that talent mark gets close. When you beat a team and you're going to come out and say, well, we got better players than they do. That's the type of stuff that gets hung up on boards later in the year when it gets closer. Our players are better than yours. He doesn't, in an effort not to disparage coaches. Think about what that does to you. Think about if you're an Oregon football player, you got rocked, and the coach is like, our players are better than theirs. It's like, man, if you come out and say, look, we're the defending national champions, we should do this. We got a 10-year recruiting head start on him. We should, or 8 years, we should do this. Then you're okay with it. Well, our players are just better than their players. This is one of those things that Kirby better be careful about. This is where you get in a little bit of trouble. If you say this after every big win that you have, our players are better than their players, this is where you start to run into trouble as a coach. If you come out and say, look, we just execute better. We have more depth. You can get away with things like that. Speaking of that, Georgia, I think Georgia and Alabama are the 2 best teams in the country. Ohio State struggling against Notre Dame. I'd kind of take a step back with them. Clemson, don't know yet. And Georgia Tech's not teaching me anything either on this. We won't know with Clemson. Maybe all year. They roll everybody in the ACC by 30. At least when they play Notre Dame, when they go out there and beat them by 30, it's like, oh, well, Alabama does that too. So we got an idea with you. Look, the Georgia and Alabama recruiting, they're monstrous right now. They're on their own platform. And everybody that's so upset and everybody that wants parity and adding more teams to the college football playoff. I've said it and said it again. Expanding the college football playoff isn't going to add parity. You want to add parity? You take 85 scholarships and make 75 per team. You take 10 scholarships away from each team. Well, what do you put those 10 scholarships in another sport? Baseball can use them. Baseball gets what? 2/3 scholarships? Take those 10 scholarships from football and put them in other sports. You want parity in college football? You want to make it more fair? Knock the scholarship total down to 80, or from 85 to 75. That way Kirby Smart's 3rd-string left tackle isn't a 5-star high school All-American. That's how you fix that, but they're just ridiculously better. I had some Gator fans in the post-game talking, you're like, bring on Georgia. Woo, horsey. not there yet. But what a big win for Billy Napier. All right, Harp on Sports, The Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe, all of our platforms at Harp on Sports, Twitter, at Harp on Sports, Instagram. 3 ways, auditory route, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Harp on Sports, YouTube channel. Check it out. Harp on Sports, Facebook page. Of course, harponsports.com. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.